really. And as much as pandemic has facilitated a lot of stuff in terms of us being to work remotely, ultimately music industry is still a highly social industry, and you have to put your face in the space in order to make progress. Even now, even though we are coming full circle, coming back into gigging, that kind of thing now, it's still pretty essential part of making connections.
It's a relationship business, for sure.
Yes.
What did you end up doing with this artist?
We're
figuring it out.
No.
You're gonna drop the artist.
Well, the artist said, I don't think we'll be able to do this, and I need to email them and confirm that, really, and express and say, like, all power to them if they've got talent, which is why I wanted to work with them. Like, if I don't think an artist can potentially go the distance, then I probably won't book them to work with me, or vice versa. Yeah, so I think she will do well if she gets the correct team around her. I'm not convinced she will be able to do it in the country she's now moved to, based on her ambitions. But you can only take a horse to water.
It's so interesting, and the relationship thing is so huge. And like, I don't know, just having done this podcast, I know people that are working in so many countries and states in America. And like, it's just like people ask me randomly for like a recommendation. I don't know, like my buddy asked me for somebody to mix a song, like, because I wasn't available. I was like, I wonder who would be good. It's like, who have I had on my show for this kind of a genre?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, cool. Now I know all these people all over the place.
Yeah, I bet that's really increased your network a hell of a lot.
It absolutely has. And I've made relationships with people. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So you should start a podcast, because then podcasting is the best way to connect with people in our industry, I think.
To be fair, I did start a network with a pal.
That's fair.
And we have, we're charging
enough.
towards 900 members now. So I think I'm set for the moment. But thank you for the recommendation.
That's good. Well, you could start a 2% Rising podcast if you're interested.
We did talk about it. A lot of it has been down to the fact that at the moment it's voluntarily run, and it's to do with interestingly, so there's three of us that lead it now, 2% Rising. And actually...
So you, Katie, and who else?
Myself, Katie, and a sound designer called Suze Cooper, who actually does work in podcasts a lot. And but all of our jobs, like our profiles kind of really exploded as a result of our 2% activity, and which we love, but we didn't look for. We essentially started the network we couldn't find anywhere else because we were very lonely in our jobs. And that's me being very, very honest. Consequently, we are finding ways to continue to keep the network voluntarily run, because we're conscious that once you start hiring a team into play, it does change the tone of the group. But knowing that everyone who's running it is there because they're passionate about it and not there for a paycheck, really gives it something special that we don't want to lose. So we basically ran out of time and resources during the week to put something together, but you never know. You never know.
You need to get like a volunteer, someone in the community to kind of help do the editing and post it.
It could happen.
Or something like that.
I mean, I expect several 2% risers may listen to this, so my inbox may be flooded after this with my members all going, me.
Yeah, totally. You'd be amazed. You never know. You never know who'd be willing to. I had a guest on named Damian Taylor, who has a network called the Complete Producers Network. He was like, anybody listen to this? Like, I was basically telling him, like, yeah, I need help. Like, this podcast is a lot of work, and I don't have time anymore. Yeah. And he's like, somebody in the community who's listening to this, reach out. And a couple people reached out, and by the time they had reached out, I'd already kind of like found somebody to help me.
Oh wow!
But anyways, it was cool that he said that on the air, and like, this is a guy with like 7 Grammy nominations. And I was like, okay, wow, thanks.
Those people,
legit.
Those people are the best. The people who have achieved a heck of a lot and still manage to like kind of put the ladder back down, rather than pulling the ladder up. I've met lots of people that pull the ladder up. It's rare to find people that are actually willing to help. It's very nice.
Yeah, it was interesting what he told me, Damien. He said, because he worked on like one of the big Bjork records, the Biophilia, and he basically said, like, after I did this, I didn't have anything else to prove. And I was like, how long did that last for? And he's like, it's still happening.
Yeah, that's what I'd expect.
And I was like, Right. I mean, maybe not for me because I have maybe more imposter syndrome, but if something like that had happened, it hasn't happened for me, obviously, but
not yet.
Anyways,
not yet.
Not yet. Right.
Stay positive.
Gotta stay positive. Totally. But anyways, I was just like, okay, cool. I feel that.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anyways.
Cool.
So this is a great opportunity for you to kind of tell us a little bit about 2% and Rising. So
cool. Yes.
Spill the beans. Tell us about how it got started and
the salacious story of 2% Rising.
However you feel like sharing.
I mean, no. I just find that really funny. I've just kind of got like a Mills and Boon novel in my head now, which is completely inappropriate. But never mind.
You'll have to educate me after the podcast.
Okay. Really, okay, so 2% Rising really starts with Katie and myself. So Katie and I are good pals, and happily we still are, even though we work together a tremendous amount, we are still good pals. So that bodes well. You know, I'm thrilled about that, to be honest. We haven't got sick of each other yet. And we met, I think I was still signed at the time. So I was at a point where I think I was about to release a record with that label. And then I was looking for someone to master the next record, the next EP that I was making. And I didn't really understand what mastering was, but I'd had an okay time with the mastering engineer who we'd worked with before, and it had been remotely. But I just felt like I wanted to work with people that I felt more of a resonance with. And so a Women in Music event, of which there are many. I basically was there because Sporty Spice was speaking. Just
nice.
Hand on heart. And she seems absolutely lovely. But interestingly, she came up in a completely different era of music industry. So there were a number of times where she was just saying, it's completely different now. It's nice that you're asking me this, but there isn't really a lot that I can advise on because I came up in a completely different era.
Yeah, that was like, 20, 25 years ago?
Something like
Spice
that.
Girls?
Yeah, in the 90s when, you know, most of us were still children.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
yeah, exactly. And but I wanted to hear her speak. And Katie was chairing a panel earlier that day. And it was in a big room in central London, in basically in the mayor's office of London, their kind of big forum space. And after that panel, I started walking to the wine table and making my way through a crowd. And because I'm a bit taller than Katie basically saw me cutting through the crowd and jumped in behind me to use me as like a snowplow to the wine. And I realized that she'd been behind me for like a minute, and I sort of turned around and I was like, are you following me? And she her eyes just kind of went bing, and she was like, no. And so we just started having this like really odd, it was like a bit of a meet cute kind of situation where we just started talking. And I said, look, actually, I really enjoyed your panel, which was true. I found her to be very down to earth. She's from the north of England in Manchester. Generally very down to earth people. I'm from the middle of England and slightly less down to earth, but a little bit. And basically, the closer you get to London, the more bonkers people get. And so I just clicked with her quite quickly because I was like, yes, you speak a lot of sense and you don't beat about the bush. So that's stuff that I enjoy, and it's rare in the music industry. So especially if people can be direct without being unkind, that's like the other end of the spectrum. So,
right. How do you be direct while being kind?
While being kind, yeah, it's an
interesting combination.
It's vital,
but it's important.
Yeah,
right. But that's what we do, right? That's what we were saying.
That's what we hope. Yeah,
that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're all trying. Well, some of us are trying to do. And so we connected, and I kind of contacted her then about mastering my EP because she then looked me up. To her credit, she looked me up and she was saying, your voice is amazing. And I was like, thanks so much. And so we then, we worked together on my second record, and we just kept talking, and we kept having these long telephone conversations. She lives in Brighton, not in London. And these conversations got longer and longer in the middle of a work day. And this was just before the pandemic, really. This was probably February time. And I said to her, so this is, like, time has passed in this duration. We're talking like 3 years later. And I had hung out with her since then and, that kind of thing. And I said, look, we are having the same phone conversation over and over again, which is that we feel isolated because we don't know other people who do our jobs who look like us. It was literally baseline representation. There aren't more women and gender minorities in our job. And then it was finally Billboard publishing that 2% statistic of the fact that I think it was 2018. Someone's going to correct me on this on the internet, because that's what happens when I don't check these things before I speak. Billboard basically said out of the top 100 commercially successful tracks that year, only 2%. So that's 2 tracks in 100 had been produced by women. And it was such a heinous statistic, and it was all over the internet. But then nobody did anything about it, of course, because, you know, why would they?
Until you guys came along.
Well, that's right. And just, and so it really upset both of us. And we ended up talking about that and about our own sense of isolation. And so, and also we were both part of a lot of women in music networks, and we still are. And we understood that they were doing the best that they can to meet the needs that they saw. But because there were so few of us working in this niche in production and studio engineering, why would they cater for us? And so we were very conscious that we would basically need to find community, find professional network, because we were constantly hitting up against issues that, to be frank, our cis, straight colleagues who were male were not. And a lot of the time did not want to discuss with us. So we weren't finding empathy, really, or at least not in a way that could like graduate to allyship. Like we had a few people, like a handful of lovely cis men who were doing what they could. And, you know, but ultimately we continued to just feel very isolated. So we just decided, let's start a Facebook group and call it this thing, because it's powerful, because it's in allusion to a statistic that everyone is now aware of. And then there's a sense of, let's find more of us, because there's got to be more of us. Because also so many, particularly women, but gender minorities as well, come into production the way I did, because no one ever suggested to me that production was a career option. When I came into the music industry, the only thing that people basically implied I could ever be was an artist. And not really even an artist, but a singer. That was the only shape I was allowed to fit. And if I was writing songs, then I was obviously writing them with a man somewhere. And, you know, and there was this sense of, this is all you're allowed to do. You're allowed to stand on a stage and look pretty and make a noise with your mouth. And it was only really through me having this weird DIY career that I realized that wasn't the case. But I thought, you know what? I know there's got to be more people like me who are in their bedrooms learning Logic, because they got to GarageBand first, because that was the freebie. Yep. And then, you know, a lot of the functionality in the DAWs are very similar. So
that was me, you know,
there you go.
That was me 11 years ago.
There you go.
Totally.
And so Katie and I were talking, and I said, I bet there's more than we think. So we started this Facebook group, and we invited the people we know. And between us, Katie is furthering her career than I am. So Katie knew more, but I knew a few. It came to about 50, and we were elated. We were like, yeah, we found the gang. Great. But also we were conscious about the kerfuffle going on with Brexit and the music industry, and we wanted to make sure we foster good connections with Europe. So at first we made it just the UK and the EU. It's not anymore, it's global. But at the time, and so we were like, oh my gosh, we've got 50. This is astonishing, you know. And it was like, and then the days passed, and we hit the first week of March. After about 5 days, we had 150. And our minds were blown. We were like, where are you all? And so we just started talking and explaining that we wanted to create a digital space, because on music production forums, there's a lot of shouting down and a lot of shaming. And that's not a conducive environment to learning. And there's a lot of misogyny as well. Like, you know, a lot of the time, like I spent like 5 minutes on forums for production, and I was like, no, this is toxic. I'm not interested in basically, let's compare plugins and who's got the who's got the bigger fucking, how much analog shit have you got? Oh, I've got more. Like, I don't care.